If you clicked on this video, then you want to learn the medieval German art of longsword fighting. In the 15th century, the Grand Master of the Kunstfechtens, Johannes Lichtenauer, wrote the Zettel. The Zettel is a poem which describes the Grand Master's philosophy, methodology, and overall mindset when entering a longsword fight. We have translations of his Zettel that are in modern English. This one is translated by Stephen Cheney. And what we're going to do in this series of videos is we're going to go through the Zettel, and I'm going to give some simplistic explanations of what the Zettel is trying to convey to you so that you can aid us in the effort of restoring the medieval art of longsword fencing. Our Zettel starts with a very fancy foreword that says if you want to master the way of sword fighting, you're going to have to become a knight. You're going to have to honor God. You're going to have to love women. You're going to have to build a sense of chivalry and mannerism. You're going to have to not only master the sword, but also grappling, pole arms, and spears. But most importantly, it gives you the first key, which is that all art has distance and measure. So what that means is you're going to have to be aware of the space that you inhabit within third dimensional reality. And if you want to learn more about that, I got a previous video, I think it's called You Keep Doubling in Longsword Because You Don't Measure Up. So watch that. That's all about measure. Measure is very simple. With that being said, we're going to get into the first common lesson. If you wish to fence strongly, go right to left with hewing and left to right with hewing. And what that means is basically if my sword's on my right side and when I decide to attack, I'm going to carry the movement through on my right side. So typically, in longsword, you're going to want to do something like a wrestling stance with your foot. So, for example, imagine there's a line from the back of your heel facing forwards. If you're right-handed, you're going to have your right hand near the crossguard. You're going to have your left hand on the pommel. And your left leg will be bent forwards, facing in front of you to the left of the center line, which is something you're going to have to imagine for yourself. Like I said, your back heel is either on the center line or next to it on the other side. And to fence strongly, whenever you throw your cut from the right side, you're going to do a passing step with your right foot. So like that. And likewise, if I'm on my left side, I'm going to move my left foot when I move forward. So that's what it means to fence strongly, is you're going to carry your movement on whichever side your sword is on. Whoever goes after hews, he permits his art little joy. What he basically means is you should not wait for your opponent to attack. If you wait for your opponent to attack, you're forced to parry or dodge. So your opponent knows what you're going to do. You're giving control of the fight to your opponent. Fencing really is all about control. So, and if you go back to my previous videos, I talk about before and after, but a simple gloss of that is if I do something, I'm in the before, your reaction puts you in the after. This is like a tennis match. We're sort of passing the ball back and forth between right of way. And if you're just waiting for your opponent to attack, you're always going to be in the after. And staying in the after, staying reactionary is not going to get you to win the fight. You can end the fight relatively quickly if you put your opponent in check. So if you want to do some good art, make sure that you're always putting your opponent in check by staying in the before. Hew nearing what you want, no change comes into your shield, to head to body, do not abandon the light hits with entire body, fence what you wish to perform strongly. And what all that is saying is if you're going to attack, you need to have a target. What are my targets? Well, you're either going to target the head or you're going to target the body, simply because you can wound somebody really badly if you strike them in the head or the body. In tournaments, the head tends to be worth more points. It tends to be more skillful. Be nice to people if you're going to hit them in the head with a practice sword. Don't try to decapitate them. And invest in some really good head protection as well if you're going to be fencing. You can get like the hard leather red dragon hood that you can put on it as a mask overlay, that's fine. But if you can get something hard plastic like a Wakusi helmet or something like that, even better. My head still hurts because of all the times I've been hit in the head with a sword. Anyways, it says, do not abandon the light hits. So you might be able to, you won't get the home run every single time. You're not gonna get the money shot every single time. But for example, you can attack with your sword, and if you're in a bind or whatever, maybe you can still catch some shoulder on the way out, or when you retreat, cut the wrist a little bit. It's a light hit, but most fighting is a death spiral, really. So if you wound, your opponent becomes weaker. The more wounds you add on, the saying "death by 1,000 cuts" is definitely valid. So don't abandon those slices. Don't abandon those little runoffs. If you can tap the shoulder real quick and cut that, hey, you're winning the match. And it says, with your entire body, fence what you wish to perform strongly. This goes back to what I was saying with that passing step. So if I'm going to cut you on my right side, I'm going to carry through with my entire body. So I'm using my core, I'm using my legs, I'm using my shoulders, I'm using everything. Okay? So make sure you're using your entire body when you do those cuts. Here, what is simple: do not fence above left if you are right, and if you are left, also very clumsy in the right. And this kind of goes back to what I've been saying in the last few comment lessons, is that if you're on one side, you want to stay on that side until you move to the other. So, just basic sword mechanics here. Swordsmanship 101, basically. That's a really good cut. Now, before I get roasted in the comments, I wasn't worried about edge alignment or anything like that. It probably was really bad. But what was good about it is that I moved from my right side, thus generating the power necessary to make a really good cut. But if I did this, this isn't very strong. It'll do something, but it's not art. It's not art. Don't do that. If you're going to fence strongly. The strong way to fence is to move on the side that your sword is on, and then you can double up. I didn't want to hit my tripod, so I pulled back. Okay, and then back to the weakening thing, right? You throw a cut, bam. It may be a weak thrust. I may have sliced something on the shoulder, but he's going to have to take it. So it is what it is. Before and after, the two things are a wellspring of all art, weakness and strength. Indes, with it note that word, so you may learn to work and assess with art. If you frighten easily, never learn any fencing. So we're going to break that verse into pieces, and I'm going to explain those words for you. Before and after, the two things are a wellspring of all art. So this all goes back to the very first video that I made. If you're not good at longsword, you should learn fencing, or whatever I named it. Before and after are two parts of the same whole, and that whole is right of way. Right of way is an indicator that signals to you that you can strike your opponent without getting hit yourself, which is the core objective of all fencing, no matter what sword you use. Now, if I attack my opponent first, that places me in the before, because that is before my opponent's reaction or counterattack, however you want to put it. My opponent has to address my threat. Otherwise, he's going to get hit. So that places him in the after, which is a reaction. Now, there's a lot of trickery that you can do, and really the essence of the longsword fighting game is to stay in the before and to take the before from your opponent without them really noticing. So you're going to have to keep that in mind, before and after, before and after, before and after. This is how you're going to come to any sort of art. So weakness and strength. So we're going to talk about the blade for a second. So from your crossguard to about the middle of your blade is called your strong, simply because if I cross up, this is going to resist a lot easier than if I were to take the top half of my sword all the way down here, which is called the weak. You know, this thing flexes, but if I put some force on this, my sword's going to be guided by that force. Whereas if I was on my strong, I can kind of put up with it a little bit. So this is really important because when you bind up, whatever movement you choose to do after that is going to be heavily reliant on whether or not you are weak or strong in the bind. It's not bad to be either. You just need to know what to do when you get there. And there's a really simple word that you say to yourself. It's a magic word, believe it or not. It's called indes. Indes is the Latin word for in the moment. And that indes check is how your brain is going to figure out whether or not it's weak or strong in a bind, to stay focused in the match, to either then move on to a duplication or to move on to a mutation, which we're going to get into that in later videos. But for now, you just need to remember the weak, the strong, and also that the indes is going to be that special word you say to yourself to know whether or not you are in a weak bind or a strong bind. And then finally, this is when Daddy Fencer has to talk to you. Lichtenauer puts in there that if you frighten easily, you should never learn any fencing. So if you're afraid of this, if you're scared of your blade, if you get jumpy and sporadic and you can't think straight while in a fencing match and you just get scared and terrified, you're cooked, is what he's saying, basically. You need to build up some courage, man. And he doesn't really list a way how to not be afraid, but I'm going to give you some advice. If you find yourself easily being frightened by the sword, you should learn grappling. Basically, sword fighting is grappling with a sharp stick. So, if you're a confident grappler, then it'll help you get over the sword fight a lot easier. So, if you are scared of the sword, go learn some grappling stuff, and then come back to the sword, and then you'll be all right. That was the first half of Lichtenauer's common lessons. In review, have a bit of a chivalrous mindset, build up some courage, love God and honor women, and when you fence, make sure you're fencing strongly by cutting from right to left or left to right, whichever side your sword is on, and making sure that your back foot is carrying through that movement so you can move to the other side. To come to good art, you're going to have to stay in the before, which means you're not going to sit around and wait for your opponent to attack you, and keep in that concept of the before and after, which are the two halves of the same whole. If I strike you first, then I'm in the before and you're in the after. Keep in mind that word indes, because that word indes is going to keep you in the fight, keep you focused, and let you know whether or not you're strong or weak in a bind. And if you're having trouble with the sword in the sense that you're a little frightened of it, go learn some wrestling techniques and come back to this. Welcome to the Fighters Guild. I'll see you in the next one.